Imagine if we brought Benjamin Franklin back to life. How would he react to modern American society? He would be confused by iPhones and social media. He would be fascinated by our politics and frightened by cars, or maybe fascinated by cars and frightened by our politics. To put it simply, he would feel very uncomfortable, because these are all changes and developments that he could have never imagined in his lifetime. But there is one place where Benjamin Franklin is guaranteed to feel comfortable and right at home, and that place is the classroom. With desks still lined up in rows, a teacher still lecturing at the front of the room while students listen and take notes, a whiteboard to replace the old blackboard, nothing much has really changed with this image. But now, as the world around us is shifting with new technology, we are starting to change classroom dynamics and schooling so that students are prepared for a world that Benjamin Franklin never saw coming. With all these changes occurring, we can't possibly expect students today to be the same as students in the past. Today, I'm going to talk about how to be a 21st century student. So let's get a raise of hands. How many of you attended Pleasanton Middle School? Awesome. And how many of you have ever run on the track at Pleasanton Middle? Awesome. So when I was a student at Pleasanton Middle School 3 years ago, this is what the track looked like. A lot has changed with this image. Chances are, if you raised your hand, the only track you've ever known at Pleasanton Middle is this one. In 7th grade, I noticed my peers getting injured on the school's track, which had sharp pieces of gravel covering the surface. Students who fell ended up with awful cuts on their knees and elbows, and gravel stuck in their wounds. I was just an ordinary student, but I decided that something had to be done. So I gathered my nerves together and convinced the secretary that I had an important issue to discuss with Mr. Whitney, who was our principal at the time. At our meeting, I asked Mr. Whitney if I could fundraise money to renovate the track. I learned from Mr. Whitney that the track had actually been on the facilities improvement list for years, but nothing had been done about it. And I also learned that the track, to renovate it, would cost $60,000. Now, there are a lot of things that I could have thought at that point. I could have thought, there's no way I can fundraise that amount of money. I could have thought, it's time to pick an easier project. But instead, I thought, I better start now with fundraising. So with the help of other students, I organized my first school-wide fundraiser in the spring of my 7th grade year. We knew that to fundraise $60,000, this would be like all of you purchasing 90 songs on iTunes right now. It's a lot of money. So we worked hard. We hung up flyers all around campus to publicize our fundraiser. We even organized pizza parties to award the classes that fundraised the most money. We worked before school, during lunch, and after school. So I felt confident that we would fundraise at least $5,000. In the end, we fundraised around $1,000. Though I was very disappointed at the time, it's now clear to me that even a little bit of progress is meaningful on the path to achieving a big goal. By successfully fundraising $1,000, I had finished the first lap of a 60-lap marathon. I moved forward by working with the school and community to organize a fun run event in November of 2013. I persuaded 4 businesses to sponsor, so we decorated the track with balloons, played music, provided wristbands and popsicles to every student, and awarded cakes to the students who ran the most laps. It took place during the school day, so every student participated. Even students who typically find every excuse possible to avoid running in PE ran during the fun run. After all the donations were counted, I had fundraised nearly $20,000. But I was still around $40,000 short from my goal. But then great news came. The school district heard about my efforts and offered to fund half of the $60,000 if I could fundraise $30,000. And then in the spring of 2014, the Parent-Faculty Association contributed around $5,000. So now I was only $5,000 away from reaching my goal. One last hurdle to jump. but it wasn't going to be an easy one because I needed to find an entirely new source of funding. Then I had an idea. I would go to Safeway headquarters in Pleasanton, request to meet with the CEO, and ask him for a $5,000 grant. Surprisingly, it didn't exactly go as planned. When I arrived at headquarters, I ran around in the rain looking for the right building and tried several before I found the one I was looking for. Then I finally walked up to the front desk and asked, "May I meet with the CEO of Safeway, Mr. Edwards?" And the lady replied, "I'm sorry, but he's in a meeting right now." So I asked her if I could schedule a meeting with him, and she looked at me and saw that I wasn't kidding. So that day, though I didn't get to meet with the CEO of Safeway, I did have the opportunity to present to the director of the Safeway Foundation, and weeks later, I obtained a $5,000 grant.
Yes!
I had finally reached my goal of fundraising $60,000, and the track was renovated over the summer of 2014 as I was moving on to high school. What I hope my story illustrates is the idea that students in the 21st century are no longer just passive receivers of information. We are change makers in our schools and in our community. Effective change makers have resilience, collaboration skills, and community consciousness. But we cannot learn these skills from a lecture or a textbook. We cannot develop these skills if we are satisfied with being passive receivers of information. The best way to develop the skills we need to make change is to do exactly that, make change. Because when we take actions to make positive change in our schools and community, we are guaranteed to have experiences that will develop our resilience, collaboration skills, and community consciousness. Resilience is the ability to adapt to change. Sheryl Sandberg, COO at Facebook, once said, "You are not born with a fixed amount of resilience. It's a muscle. You can build it up and draw on it when you need it." In a world that's changing rapidly, the ability to adapt to change is critical. Let's say you're interested in changing this image and revolutionizing our classrooms so that Benjamin Franklin wouldn't be able to recognize them. After all, we need 21st century classrooms to support 21st century learning. Then imagine a classroom with a device for every student to access the internet. Imagine using an app to connect students in the classroom with experts in various fields. Imagine having mobile desks and chairs that you can easily rearrange into table groups to promote collaboration. Maybe you're interested in making all of this a reality. Then consider meeting with administrators at Amador to discuss your thoughts. You would develop resilience because after talking to administrators, you may find that the original plans you had in mind aren't going to work, and you'll learn to adjust those plans. Consider fundraising money to bring this technology to our classrooms. You would develop resilience because the first fundraiser you organize may not be as successful as you would like it to be, but you'll recover from disappointment and realize that all progress is meaningful. Consider learning more about the school bond that was passed recently and how you could influence the way those funds are spent on our classrooms. Through all of these actions, you would develop resilience. Collaboration. This means people working together to reach a common goal. Collaboration was not an expectation of students in previous generations, but in the 21st century, it is necessary for our success. Let's say you're interested in changing this image and reducing student stress here at Amador. After all, students need to be mentally healthy to be successful learners. Then imagine workshops that teach students time management skills and help students select an appropriate course schedule to reduce stress. Imagine working with teachers to implement classroom practices that would decrease test anxiety. Imagine using social media platforms to provide tips to students about stressing less throughout the school year. Maybe you're interested in making all of this a reality. Then consider starting a group here on campus that works to reduce student stress. You would develop collaboration skills through working with other students and learning to utilize everyone's strengths to help the whole group succeed. Consider meeting with your teachers to discuss classroom practices. You would develop collaboration skills through having these conversations and learning to see the situation from a different perspective. And consider reaching out to other schools nearby to see how they've had success with reducing stress levels. Because through all of these actions, you would develop collaboration skills. Lastly, community consciousness is a defining characteristic of a 21st century student. It's important that we understand local and global issues and recognize our role as individuals in the community. To develop community consciousness during your next 4 years in high school, I challenge you to find an issue that you're passionate about and do something to make a difference. There are no limits to what you can do. You can improve the quality of food served in our school cafeteria. You can help students build relationships with their teachers. You can volunteer for a nonprofit organization, raise awareness for a global issue, fundraise money for a cause, tutor your peers. The possibilities are endless and bound only by your imagination. As 21st century students, we shape our futures by shaping the world around us. So ask yourself, what do I want to change about this image? And how am I going to do it? Thank you.